Greetings, greetings. So we have not been doing any podcast for 2 weeks, but we have decided to bring to you some top quality content right now. And being sci-fi nerds that we are, we're eager to dive into the topic that we have chosen for today. And before we do that, I just want to ask my friend here, Maximus. How did he find the latest trailer for the Dune movie, for the Dune sequel? What do you think? It just dropped a week ago, I think.
Yep. Uh, More than the trailer, I'd like the top comment on that video. It
Oh,
said, "Hip to anyone who didn't see Dune in theater." And
yeah.
if you recall the first movie, it was a visual and audio masterpiece. Uh,
Hmm.
Definitely, it can't cover the entire essence of the book, but
Hmm.
uh, just considering it as a movie and the way it will be shot and the way it will be made, that would be a visual treat again, I believe. And let's see how the legend of Paul Atreides
Yeah,
progresses.
I think they shot it back to back. So I'm not sure about it, but I think the rumor was going around that the production studio, they were waiting to see what how the first movie was doing in the box office, and it seemed to have done well. And so that's why they're going ahead with with the second movie now. So yeah, I thought it was interesting. I thought the first movie was interesting, but of course, the topic that we're going to do today is going to be related to this movie somewhat, in the sense that the second Blade Runner movie has the same director as
Dune.
the Dune movies that are coming out right now. So yes, I guess you haven't noticed, we'll be doing a brief analysis on the Blade Runner movies, and we have watched both. I mean, personally, I have watched the first Blade Runner a long time back. I think it was back in 2008 or something like that. And during that time, I still remember streaming platforms were not a big thing back then. And I was eager to get my very first DVD player. Apologies for the sound that's coming on. It's just some puja that's happening next door. So yeah, got my very first DVD player back then, and one of the first DVDs that I bought was the 1982 Blade Runner movie. And I remember it wasn't such high quality or anything like that, but it was still, I'm talking about the DVD quality that I watched. The quality of the movies that we get sometimes.
Okay, was it
So,
specifically a video CD, VCD that we used to call, or was it a DVD?
well, it was a a DVD disc, but the quality, back there they used to sell those 3-in-1 movies and 4-in-1 movies, that kind of disc.
Okay, so I think that must be like MPG files of three
Yeah,
movies.
yeah, MPG file. Yeah, I watched it in that format back there, and it was like, how even though you're not getting the best of quality, you're still blown away by the content of it. So back then, of course, it was a new thing. I was not that much exposed to dystopian fantasy movies, that kind of aesthetic that movie presented. And this movie, the first one, it came out in 1982. And I saw that later on, I found out that there were several editions of this movie. There's a theatrical version, and then there's director's cut. There are actually several director's cut. I don't know why the director, Ridley Scott, of course, another famous director, he directed the first movie. I don't know why he went ahead and made so many different cuts of this movie. It's
I
create.
think
Mhm.
I can understand why he did that, because I saw that movie as a teenager or in my early teens, and I had seen Harrison Ford's Indiana Jones and Star Wars, so I liked that actor at that point of time. And just because it's Harrison Ford movie, I didn't know anything about Ridley Scott at that point of time. I just watched the movie. I think for 30 to 40 minutes, I was completely bored and I stopped watching it.
Yes, it's definitely slow paced, and but it's more than that. I mean, if you watch the theatrical versions, and if you watch the theatrical version and the director's cut and the latest version, which is I think they're calling it the final cut, there's some minor differences, nothing major at all. So there's a noticeable difference in the tone of both versions, the director's cut and the theatrical cut. The theatrical cut has a narration, or Harrison Ford is narrating over the scenes. So you can see, like, the way they shot the movie, they were expecting it, like those old film noir movies, like in the black and white. The detective or the main lead character is narrating the movie, and they were shooting, they were wanting the film to have, they were wanting this movie to have this kind of a tone, like it would have kind of a reflective tone. But when you get that narration out, which Harrison Ford, the main character, he did not do the narration properly at all. I mean, if you see that original thing, it's like he was half asleep. So
I think he must be like, just let's get it done, and he must have just shot
right,
it.
right. You're totally correct. He was like, okay, this is in my contract. Just get it done already. And Harrison Ford, right? If you watch the Star Wars movies, he wanted the character to die off early for some reason. So he's just bothered,
I think
you
that
know.
was a smart choice because the movie
Yeah.
was pathetic. So
Yeah.
rather just die early, that, but
You're,
still, I
you're
think,
talking about the Star Wars, the new Star Wars
yeah,
movie,
the trilogy, the
the
sequence
sequel,
trilogy. Yeah.
sequel trilogy. Yeah. Yeah.
What
So
what will they do in the new one? As I think there's one more trilogy coming.
yeah, they're saying that uh, what's the name of the protagonist character in the new one?
Ray.
Ray. Yeah, they're going to show Ray as pregnant or something. Like she's pregnant or something. It's rumored. I don't know. So that would be surprising.
I mean, it must be IVF or something like that of that. She's
So,
not a desirable character.
oh my goodness. Oh, that's incredibly misogynistic of you, Maximus.
What?
We have to adhere to community standards here, bro. So, so, anyways, let's get into the Blade Runner series. It's like
Hmm.
only two movies. So the first one is based upon this novel by famous sci-fi author Philip K. Dick, and the name of his novel is "Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep?" So it's like it's not a page by page faithful adaptation. It's loosely adapted from that novel, but it's more or less the same in its themes. So right at the start of the opening frame of this movie, we're shown like the future is like the year is very funny. It's like 2019, so we're past
Yeah.
the future in some
I
sense.
think Ridley Scott had a quite positive picture about 2018.
Oh yeah, I wanted to comment on that too. If you see the sci-fi movies back in the 80s and early 90s, these directors, directors like Spielberg and Ridley Scott, they seem to have a very positive vision of the future. I don't think they were expecting us to, like we're right now expecting the newest version of iPhone. What's the new iPhone is going to be? And what's the the latest operating system, or what's the latest trendy social media platform is going to be like. But they were back then, they were thinking like for flying cars, sky
Yeah.
high buildings, like, and cloning people and so on. So yeah, I mean, the very opening frame of Blade Runner, they were basically like it is showing us, it's a first shot is the eye, you know.
Yeah.
The but so that's you illuminate confirmed. Yes, analysis over right now, we can pack things up. But just to get into it, the first frame is basically like, I think they're showing the eye of the replicant. The replicant is basically like the androids, advanced androids
I mean,
of the
sorry, before
future.
you get into replicants,
Yeah.
could you just like give a brief about the world of Blade Runner before
Yeah,
we
of
get into?
course, of course, of course. So that's the opening introduction. It's like it's saying that the world is now, robotics has been advanced, and they've created this advanced robot or androids, cybernetic, whatever you want to call it, called replicants. They're like human beings, and at one time they used to use these replicants as slave labor. And I don't know what happened. It's implied that some sort of rebellion has happened. These replicants rebelled, started to get violent or whatever. So they created these hunters of replicants. They're known as blade runners. So Blade Runners are basically cops who hunt down and kill replicants. So Harrison Ford's character, I think his name is Deckard. He's a Blade Runner, and he's the protagonist. And the main antagonist is, of course, the leader of a small pack of replicants called Roy. So these replicants, they have a 4-year lifespan, so they don't have that much time to
Yeah,
live.
that's like a fail safe, right?
Fail safe, yeah, that's a fail safe system that they've created so that these replicants, somehow controlled. They don't, go out of the plantation or whatever, like if we're using the slave analogy. So yeah, that's like that's like the plot, the premise of the plot rather. And the world that's shown in Blade Runner, it's basically like, imagine a very overpopulated planet where it's like, it's totally multicultural, and it's totally a class based society in every sense. So they have the corporate power in this, which is in this movie exemplified by a corporation called Tyrell Corporation. So that's like the top of the hierarchy. They have this huge pyramid like building, and it's like overseeing the entire city. And at the ground level, you have all of these multicultural, like you have Chinese. At one point you even see a bunch of Hare Krishnas dancing in the street. And you see, whatever, every kind of culture you can think of. and there are there's this enormous balloon in the sky is constantly running Japanese music. And you also see many of the modern corporations, big corporations advertised in many of the
I remember
scenes.
Coca-Cola being.
Coca-Cola, Kodak. And what's funny is there was also one scene where it's like a background is Atari. So I think they did
Yeah,
not see Atari running out of business in
I think
2019.
that was JF Sebastian's house. Some.
Yeah, so I don't remember the exact scene, but I do remember it being it's like bright neon. Everything is in neon, like everything is very bright, and we hardly see daytime, because I think it's implied that there's some kind of weather manipulation or
Bill
whatever.
Gates.
Bill Gates,
Bill Gates wanted to
he wanted to
block the sun.
block out the sun. Yeah, so it's artificial controlled weather. And so just to go through some of my initial notes. uh yeah, I mean, that's the initial premise. So what do you think of the world of Blade Runner? What what did you notice that was significant?
I think there are some things that they guessed it right. One was, uh, the Chinese takeover of the international finance.
Oh yeah, yeah. There was a prominent Japanese song that's this Japanese geisha or whatever
Ah,
who was singing. I think they may have predicted that there was going to be a Japanese takeover because in the early 80s, 70s, the Japanese were known as the
hmm,
dragons, rising
yeah.
dragons or whatever.
So yeah, so
Uh,
really couldn't make out whether it's. I mean, that even Japanese use the Chinese character, right? They call
right,
it
right.
kanji. They call it kanji. So yes, and there wasn't daylight mentioned. I mean, I didn't see any scene in which there was daylight. And like you said in the beginning, they show the like the HQ of Tyrell Corporation, which is like pyramidal shape, and they have all these occultist references. The owl in the office when Harrison Ford's uh, visits. That's definitely there. Secondly, what I noticed is like somewhat like what this fourth industrial revolution is all about, where whether it might be via communism or via inclusive capitalism or what you call it. The like there was no so-called middle class. Either everything was a ghetto or everything that was somewhat that signified power was Tyrell Corporation. There was nothing in between. And this is where, like, if you see from 2020 or even little bit earlier, uh, the middle class, the amount of population in the middle class keeps decreasing. So that's one parallel that I noticed. So, I think when it comes to movies with similar theme or transhumanism in general, so like every transhumanism plot, the idea here was, I think, somewhat there was some kind of depopulation that has already happened, and there was some civilization outside called the off world. And I think what they've tried to show is, for resources, most probably they've already destroyed the earth. And I'm not sure about this, but I think that's what they're trying to show.
Yeah, the implication is certainly there. Like
Uh,
as we mentioned, there's no daylight,
mm,
and there's little next to nothing shown of the outside or outside the city. Like, is if there is anything at all outside the city, the city is like this enormous overpopulated
mm,
mega city kind of place.
mm.
So of course, they've shown flying cars and all of these physical inventions, but right now we've come to realize that there's a stagnation in any innovation, in physics department.
Hmm.
So there's like that's one thing, the director, or rather the novelist, has not been able to predict. They were still very hopeful, and like you mentioned, like these great reset kind of agendas. They're what they've done is basically like taken away all all innovations in the physics department, and they've like totally made us like, it seems like we're headed towards a reality that's like going into something like the metaverse. So like a virtual reality, like you're in your little pod and you're going to just uh talk to artificial intelligence or whatever, and
Yes.
real world human interactions are totally
Yes,
limited.
and that's second thing that I noticed is there were no families that were shown. Like
Yeah,
mostly
right.
they were just adults who
Yeah,
were alone.
right,
So
right.
yes,
Yeah,
so there's definitely this Darwinistic assumption or way of looking at life in which humans are something that keep evolving over a period of time, and when they make the replicants, which are basically machines, uh, and they have the same view that need to be improved, and I think that is where this group called or batch called Nexus 6 comes up. So they are replicants who are better than the previous version, and they are all created for a specific purpose. Like the antagonist is specially made for uh, military purposes. There's one for pleasure, and so on and so forth. And it is this, like in every sci-fi novel that happens, that the machine starts to have consciousness and is worried about uh, its well-being and long life. That was, I mean, they sense the danger and threat to their life. In that way, it was fairly like typical, like an artificial something that is artificially made uh, has what to say emotions and wants to live and is wants to look at the overall well-being of their own kind. That was typical, but for that time, I think yes, that must be like one of the great movies that was made on that scale. But but the basic thing that you can take from the movie is for a for a modern man in this case, uh, there won't be anything unusual in that movie, because like we have been taught from a young age ki, Darwin and evolution, and we evolve and we are progressive and things will progress and there will be shortage of food and environment at risk and everything. So I think for many, it's not a big deal. Yes, like things might happen like that. Maybe in the future, families are breaking apart anyways. Especially in the Western world, people are living a lonely life. It's mostly take out food that's being consumed. So it's somewhere at some level it's already there, but for us it is more of a programming. Because the main thing that I notice is, as being as an Orthodox Christian, is uh, we look at transhumanism looks at a path of man in the future, but it usually ignores the past, like uh, how we see how human what human beings are and how were they created, or you can say uh, how was the first man on the earth, whether it was evolution or a religious view that matters. and that is and you can only give a proper explanation. Like, yes, there are people who might say ki totalitarian governments are not good, this is about control and everything. But if you try to ask a proper justification to them as in why it is bad, then that is where the real question lies. Now, for someone like us, the main theme of every sci-fi dystopian novel is conquer over death. So there is always emphasis laid on less human effort, longevity of human life, and there is always somewhere there is this long-term aim of achieving immortality, sorry. And even if you hear authors like that Harari fellow, who's the like poster boy of World Economic Forum.
Yeah, you
Okay.
all Noah Harari, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So even he said there will be a point in which we'll find out immortality. So all these other religions which speak of a life after that, that won't be required. That would be obsolete, and we'll have immortality here at Earth right now. But for us, it is a bit different because for us, this is not the world that God had created when in the beginning. Like if we go by Genesis, there was no death and there was no disease, and the I see um, that's once the fall of the man happens, that is when creation breaks. Okay, and the main idea the main thing behind resurrection is restoration of man to its initial stage when Adam and Eve were created. So Christ has conquered death and it restores man back to how man was supposed to be, and that is why we do not have a fear of we shouldn't have a fear of death, and that is something that hasn't that does not have to be conquered, but because that has been already done by Christ. So, so this is a broken world. It's the creation is broken, and there is no point in in having immortality in a broken world.
Yeah, I
So,
think those are very excellent points. And this is very interesting what you have mentioned, is because how the novel and how the movie juxtaposes against the biblical worldview. So for example, we talked about this from in the opening frame of the movie. We're seeing this gigantic eye,
uh,
and I didn't realize this back when I first saw it, but later I saw that this is meant to say that now you're going to see the world from the perspective of the replicants. So this is very interesting themes, because the motto of Tyrell Corporation, the company that makes these replicants, the motto is more human than human. So
yeah,
like it's as if like these replicants are going to be the next stage of evolution. And of course you mentioned the Darwinian worldview of the creators. So they're kind of like even the World Economic Forum guy that you mentioned, Harari, even he has alluded to this notion that we're going to somehow transcend our mortality, and the very thing about transhumanism is we are not going to have our own natural consciousness, but rather like we're going to be directed all the time by a machine or a chip or whatever you want to call it. It's going to control each and every one of our thoughts, each and every one of our desires or whatever. So these replicants are kind of like uh, you know stand-ins for artificial intelligence in a lot of ways. And one of the most notable things, I was watching an interview some days ago about the making of this first movie, and you'd be surprised. I mean, of course, anybody who's known about this, but the director Ridley Scott and the writer of this novel, Philip K. Dick, they had a very big disagreement on this on the redemption about on the redemption arc of the replicants. So
Mm,
of course this movie has a kind of a pseudo redemption arc of the
yep.
lead antagonist, the replicant.
Mm,
We'll come to that later on. But the director, he straight away makes the protagonist of the movie a replicant. In this movie, Deckard is a replicant, according to the director. So how do we know this? Well, if you have seen the director's cut, the ending scene gives that away.
the
And
red eye.
well, I'm going to come back to that later. But one of the earliest scenes in the movie, when Deckard is at his house with the another replicant, a replicant that he falls in love with, by the way.
Mm.
And both, how do we know that she's a replicant? The movie makes it very clear that she's a replicant, right? And she's like a very advanced stage of replicant, because there's no way to tell whether she's a human or a replicant, even after you do the test or whatever.
White
uh,
hand.
yeah. And in that one frame, we see her eye pupils of her the pupil of her eye is like glowing, so that's a giveaway sign that that's a replicant, right? They have a
Yeah.
But in the background we also see Roy's character, Harrison Ford's character, also has that gleam in his eye. So
Mm.
he's like shown like that. This is the director, very subtly showing that the main protagonist is also a replicant. So there's no positive human characters in this movie at all, if you keep that in mind. And the author, he disagrees with the director, because in his novel the replicants are shown as very cold-hearted, brutal creatures. They have no mercy. They are ruthless. So this is why the author of this the novel, he actually did not like this movie. And this shift, from the perspective of the novel, is from the perspective of the main protagonist, who is a human. But the movie maker, Ridley Scott, he changes the perspective to that of the replicant. So this, like, of course, is very interesting to note. I don't know if
That
it's
is.
anti-human. Yeah.
See, one thing is certain. Like when it comes to Hollywood, the idea that we have of a human is obsolete already. So it's we are Hollywood is gone beyond that point. So a human is the one with all faults, and we have to be more human than human. But yes, the point that you mentioned about Deckard being a replicant or no, even I had my doubts, but I don't know. He survived more than 4 years,
Well, that's
and
because I'll tell you about that, and this is going to be very interesting when we are getting into the sequel. So you notice that there's I don't know if you got this part, but did you notice that in one particular scene of the movie, he's having a daydream about this unicorn?
yeah.
So at the time of watching, I was like, "What the hell? Why are we being shown a unicorn? Like, what is this? Like, are we in Middle Earth right now, or what?" So at the end of the movie, his partner, he makes these small paper things,
Origami.
yeah. and he's left something on the floor outside Deckard's apartment, which is like shaped in the form of a unicorn. And when Deckard picks up that thing, he's like thinking and he's nodding, and he understands like why is this unicorn a small thing here. It's because his partner has access to his memories, much like how Deckard has access to the girl's memory.
Yeah, I
So
mean, I
that's
don't understand that part. I mean, he's pre Nexus 6, but he outlives them. I mean,
yeah.
like
And well,
models
the
before, I think Nexus 6 had that 4, even Nexus 6 had that 4 years
right.
failsafe.
Right.
So,
I mean,
I,
his love interest, he's like, she's like outlives the other models as well, right? If you remember the second movie,
Mhm.
they find her bones under
Yep.
some near some tree. So like it's implied that it's not implied actually. It's very clear. Like she gave birth,
Hmm.
like a replicant giving birth. So that's like it's not
A
very
replicating
clear.
replicant.
Yeah, it's like a miracle of something, like a biblical miracle. She even
Yeah,
has the name of Rachel.
yeah,
And if you remember the Old Testament story of about Rachel, Rachel is not able to give birth, right?
yeah.
So like after so many times, so many, like Abraham is sleeping with was it Abraham? I think Jacob was sleeping with the concubines and then giving birth and so on. And after so many times, like it's like a miraculous thing, like Rachel gives birth. So like this biblical thing, like you have to really understand the biblical symbology that this director is using, and which is very ironic because his worldview is very Darwinian, and it's not biblical at all, but there are biblical motifs inside the story. And of course, like we've talked about we briefly mentioned the antagonist at one scene, when the antagonist, of course, I should mention, like the antagonist is also having this limited 4-year lifespan, right?
Yeah.
And he wants to live longer
Oh,
like the
yeah.
humans. That's his quest. So that's like the ancient myth of Prometheus, like trying to get immortality from the gods. So also he's a very Luciferian character, because he quotes at one scene on the movie, he quotes something about from William Blake, about something about fallen angels. And that's
Thoughts, I
like,
think.
yeah, something like that. I
Yeah.
forgot I should have
Yeah,
noted
even
down the quote. So there's something about fallen angels. So that's meant to imply that his character is a kind of fallen angel. So he's like this character who's he's a replicant who is like a combatant character, who's built for off-planet combat kind of operations. And now he's come back home, and he wants to meet his creator. So it's like he's like Satan wanting to meet God the Father in some ways, right? So
yeah.
this is like explicitly Luciferian. But he's also not like explicitly Luciferian, because he's also depicted as a very as a kind of even as a kind of messiah, you know. So like you said, this is like when we see the shift of perspective from the director, the shift is so radical, so that he's portraying the replicants who are like ruthless killers, who have no feelings, no emotions at all. Now he's showing them as more human than human. He's showing these replicants as like noble,
Yeah, he
pursuers.
says Deckard in the end.
Yeah. And so also Descartes' point of view as well. So he meets his creator, Tyrell, who's like, oh, this big corporate guy. He's like a genius kind of big tech guy. And he
Bill Gates of
gets
the future.
yeah, Fortune 500 guy. And he gets up to the top level of the pyramid structure. And when he finds out that there's no way to give him more life, he kills his creator. Like he murders his
Yep.
creator. So that's explicitly like Luciferian. But
I
he's
think I
shown
watched
as,
that.
yeah, you
Uh,
want to say something?
Yes, the lines that you mentioned, which the antagonist says, was it this one? The morning comes, the night decays, the watchmen leave their stations, the grave is bust, the spices shed, the linen wrapped up, or provokes the angel of Boston to rebellion. What God is he? Writes laws of peace, clothes him in a tempest. What pitying angel lusts for tears and fans himself with sighs? What crawling villain preaches abstinence, wraps himself in fat of lamb? No more I follow, no more obedience pay. Together the rebels are able to be freed of the psychological chains that bind them, the five gates of their law-built heaven. And Roy Batty's that this was this original this what do you say and the Roy Batty's line was somewhat similar. Fiery the angels rose as they rose deep. Thunder rolled around the shores, indignant, burning with the fires of war, or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you quoted a much larger section of of that poem. In the movie, like Batty only quotes the Roy Batty, the
Yeah,
antagonist. He only
fiery.
quotes like a small fraction of it. But yeah, that's a very interesting thing that you've dug up, and it really drives home the point of what the director is trying to say about a fallen angel. Like these angels are rebelling against their creator. But another thing is like this is a very, very subtle thing, and that's why I like these old movies a lot. Is because they're so subtle in their in whatever they want to tell you. Like it's not like today's woke movies say that push it in your face, like Mary Sue, like she can defeat even Darth Vader or something like that.
I mean,
But yeah,
you know, you couldn't be that blatant at that point of time. Now the
yeah,
damage has been
maybe.
done. Now
Yeah.
it's like show them anything, nothing happens.
Yeah, that could also be the case, yeah. So so this another thing that I wanted to point out about the antagonist, because he's such an interesting character. He's also a type of Christ in the movie. He's a kind of messiah. There's a lot of symbolism that indicates he's like he's going through a passion
Hmm.
kind of thing near the end of the movie, where they have the big one-on-one battle,
Yeah, he nails
Deckard.
himself in the hand.
Yeah, there's nails going through his hands like the crucifix nails of Jesus. And then sorry, Deckard is about to die. He's about to fall from the building, but Roy saves him. He has compassion on him, and he's a replicant, and but he has compassion. He's not only has he gained consciousness, but he's gained compassionate feelings for humans. So he saves Deckard, Harrison Ford's character. He pulls him up from the building, and then he says about this monologue, which is like he's talking about all his memories
Hmm.
outside that he's seen outside of Earth, like these phenomenon that normal people would never see, and all these memories would be wiped away like tears in the rain. So that's a pretty profound monologue. And when he dies, there's a shot of a dove flying off
Yeah,
into the sky,
I think
like
he
Holy
has
Spirit.
it in his hand and he releases it, right?
Yeah, yeah. So there's a there's a shot of a dove flying into the sky, almost like his Holy Spirit has ascended
Yeah,
into the heavens or something.
and
And
I think that's the only bird in the movie you could see.
yeah, yeah, that's very interesting, because and it's so I mean it's so obvious, right? Because it's very obvious what the director was wanting to say here, because in making the antagonist a Christ-like figure, he changes everything, right? Why? Because he sort of like makes a change in the protagonist's mind, that he's a replicant. He plants that seed into him, and he also like makes the protagonist aware about the bad evil humans, and all of these things. And he's like gave him salvation so that he can escape with his new replicant
Creature.
lover. Rachel. And so like he's like he changes everything. And in the second movie we see this even more. Although like the antagonist, he dies off in the first movie, we don't see him in the second movie, but his effect, spiraling effect is very huge in the second movie, right? And I think that would this would be a good segue to enter the second movie. But before we go, like, do you have anything else to say about the first movie?
Uh, no, I don't have much, but I would say the first movie is poorly made. It's not something that, unless you know, unless you are expecting, you want to, you are willingly planned to watch this movie and try to pick up all the themes or the symbology in the movie. I think if you sit with that intent, then only the movie is slightly enjoyable. But uh, it was a boring movie, honestly speaking, at least for me. I like the second part better. It was a better made product than compared to the first one. Yeah.
Of course, they have the technical marvels and all of this today that back then they didn't have. But yeah, I found personally, I found the first movie very enjoyable compared to the second one. But yeah, I mean, this like, of course, it's more to do with like I mentioned, it was one of my first views into first forays into dystopian fantasy. Before that, I haven't really seen any dystopian fantasy movies. I saw only, the usual Star Wars, Star Trek, and all of these movies. Those are not dystopian. They're like totally different thing. But this, as far as dystopian movies go, this first movie was very influential. It influenced a lot of later day classics as well. Like Ghost in the Shell. That's a huge thing. And Akira, of course, another anime movie.
Mm.
That's a huge. That borrowed a lot from Blade Runner. Of course, aesthetically wise, not plot wise. Style wise. So yeah, going into the second movie again, the first frame, it's like the same eye shot. We're seeing the same.
Yes. Sorry to interrupt. Just wanted to say this one last thing about the 1982 movie.
Yeah.
Aesthetically, I think it was well created. I'm not talking
Mm.
like comparing it with the technology that we have for the second movie, visually speaking. That was perfectly shown as in the ghetto of the future and all the neon lights and the dystopia. I think that nothing was wrong in that, and that part was good. The product, if you say the production of the set, that was good for that time, definitely. It's just the pace and the story could have been better, and like there had to be some kind of energy in the characters of the movie. I'm talking in that way. Visually, definitely you can't compare 2017 movie with a 1982. But for that time, yes, it was the production and the sets were good, no doubt about that. It's just the story and the pace of it. That was something that personally didn't appeal to me.
Yeah, different pokes, different strokes, that kind of thing. Yeah, and of course, like the second movie, I didn't find it bad to per se. Just I think it could have been trimmed down a little more. And this is something I think I have an issue with Denis Villeneuve, who's like who tends to make his movies very long. But overly, like, it also, like the first movie, overall it has very, it goes even further with the first teams, this team set in the first movie. It goes and takes them the extra mile. And what do I mean by that? Well, of course, in the second movie, we have no doubts that the protagonist is a replicant. He's very obviously a replicant, but he's a replicant who is created to hunt down other replicants. So there's a initial part of the movie, the first movie. Ryan Gosling's character, who is the protagonist. His name is Joe. So I say have this average Joe kind of implication. So his name is Joe, and
It's
he's
K,
like,
right? K is something three. I think Joe is what that virtual lover of him.
no,
Yes,
no, that's the
that's
virtual
the
lover
person who
character
gives.
is named Joy.
No,
So
no, no.
that's
She's the one who gives the name Joe to him.
oh
He
yeah,
always
okay,
goes by K,
right, right, yeah,
SK in short.
right, 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 yeah,
About the
yeah. She
second
names him.
movie,
Mhm.
the first change that I noticed is at the beginning of the film there is daylight. So,
Yeah, yeah.
and
So
so
looks like they didn't completely block out the sun. Bill Gates moved the sun by the second movie. Like, okay, now you're
yeah.
going to see daylight or something like that. Or maybe
So
they have artificial weather, something.
and
Nothing.
it's like right from the start, it's like propaganda in your face because the protagonist K goes to this farm in which something is written in Slavonic. I don't recall it. And the moment
Oh,
he,
really?
yeah,
I didn't see that. Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
and the moment he lands, so the character, which is Nexus 8, these guys are Nexus 8. They are like better than Nexus 6. So he puts his hand in the water and he pulls out some worms. Now, yeah, now you remember that World Economic Forum video, Eat the bug.
Yeah, yeah.
and and he goes to his kitchen to cook, and the Blade Runner who is K, he also goes inside and he asks him what are you? He said I'm a farmer. What are you farming? He keeps some bugs and he's like
Bugs.
protein farm.
Yeah. Protein insects. Yeah.
And that too,
So,
he mentions the copper is standard Wallace or some standard Wallace protein or something.
yeah,
Wallace
yeah.
standard Wallace protein farm, whatever.
Yeah, so we're deep into Klaus Schwab land in the second movie. We have already started eating the bugs, in second movie, and so yeah, and so the farmer, he's revealed to be someone who had known one of the main characters of the first movie,
Hmm.
Rachel.
Hmm.
So, but of course, the protagonist is not initially aware about her or anything. He just says like Batista's character, he's the farmer. He just says that he just mentions makes a passing reference to something about miracle, something miraculous.
Hmm.
So the K Joe, his character becomes very curious about this. What is this miracle that he's talking about? And of course, he has a big fight with
Hmm.
Batista's character, and before he gets an answer, he has to kill him. And after killing him, he discovers bones, and later on in the movie, he finds out that these bones belong to none other than Rachel's character. So but of course, by doing a forensic analysis of the bones that they discover, they find out that they find out that she died in childbirth. So
Yeah.
that's very interesting. The replicants giving birth, of course, like I said, this movie takes it one step further. What was just hinted at in the first movie. The first movie says like these are more moral or more conscious or more empathetic than humans. But right now, they can give birth, so they're like equal to humans, right? They don't have a creator at all, really. So yeah, there's a very interesting shift. And of course, the biblical references are plenty in this movie as well. There's another like Tyrell Corporation kind of guy, another person. He's played by Jared Leto. He's the antagonist. And yeah, what did you think about the world of Blade Runner 2? Like, what more observations did you pick up aside from that?
So I think Blade Runner was more of replicate. It's like how you had the humanist idea that flourished. No, like it became more about the individual. Like second Blade Runner movie is more about the replicant. I don't think, I mean, humans were like, there is one police officer to which he reports to, and there is the head of the Wallace Corporation, and there, I mean, nobody human is there who is having a significant role. It's all replicant. And secondly, it did hinted towards the human thinking, like the conversation that Batista and uh, the Blade Runner. What was this guy's name? I forgot.
K Joe,
But the actor's name,
Ryan
Ryan
Gosling.
Gosling. Ryan
Yeah,
Gosling.
yeah.
So they have this conversation about why you're hunting replicants. You are also a replicant, and then he said, "Ki, you're not witnessed a miracle," and it also shows somewhere about the effect of miracle in a human's life and how it changes them. And when we go more into that uh, miracle that they speak of, after killing Batista, Ryan Gosling goes back to his car and he notices again a human-like tendency in which the tree, there is something tied, you know, like, and kept near the tree, a flower or something like that. I don't remember. And then, like you said, they found in forensic, they find out ki there is a child, and you find that theme that was similar in the story of Exodus, in which Moses is being born to a Jewish family, and since there is extermination going on, and the child is protected and hidden somewhere else. And that was similar, somewhat similar in this case, in which Rachel's child is given a separate identity and has been kept safe. So that's one biblical reference I can think of.
Well,
Uh,
on if I want to just add to that, initially the movie, we're seeing the movie from the perspective of Ryan Gosling's character, right? So Ryan Gosling, he has these memories, in his mind. He's seeing some kind of memory like they've been lost, but he's like discovering them from the subconscious.
yeah,
And it's like the movie is pulling us slowly into that direction where we are kind of expecting Ryan Gosling's character, Kate, to be the son, lost child of Rachel. But they do a bait and switch
mm,
in typical fashion of Vogue movies. But this bait and switch is very well done in my opinion, and it's not really in your face. Like
mm,
so we can get to that further on. But that's like another biblical theme. A miraculous birth. Virgin birth or whatever you want to call it, because replicants can't give birth, so this is a miracle. Uh, and of course, whoever is coming from a miraculous birth, that person is the Messiah.
yeah.
Like Christ-like figure. So yeah, please go on.
Yes, and speaking about, so that reminds me of the idea of Elon Musk, in which your consciousness or memories can be somewhere stored, and then it can be transferred to like another body, or what you call. So that was shown to some extent, like the memories of the Rachel's child, who was a girl. I don't remember that character's name in the movie, but her, I think it was her memories that were implanted in him, because when Ryan Gosling goes to see her to check whether this memory are something that have been made or someone has experienced it. So she has a look at it. She has a brief pause, and she just mentioned, ki, yes, these memories have been lived by someone. She doesn't say these are your memories. I think that was a subtle hint, ki, you know, yes, these memories are real, but it doesn't. She doesn't explicitly say these are your memories, right? So
Yeah, that's because they're setting us up for the bait, the switch that's going to happen later. So okay, let me just get into the thematic thing. Of course, this is very similar to. Did you watch that new Mad Max movie, Fury Road?
Yeah, yeah. It was a terrible movie.
Well, it was many praised it. I haven't. I didn't like it too. But the theme of the movie was very feministic, if you
Yeah,
remember. So it's very like the end of the movie. Like the villain is a very brutal
yeah.
patriarchal character, and in the end of the movie, Mad Max is making the female protagonist. He's elevating them to show like, okay, I'm stepping aside. This is your new hero. This is your new savior figure. So Blade Runner, the second movie, also does that in a very subtle way, not in your face like that movie. How does it do it? Well, first off, we're expecting Ryan Gosling's character to complete his journey and say, basically come up to Harrison Ford and say, Dad, like I'm your long lost child or whatever. That's how he, that's like how the audience is led to believe initially. It's a very subtle hint. They don't say it outright. Like, of course they won't say like it's his memory. No, 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 you were wrong, it's like another person's memory. That it's not like that, but it's a very subtle narration. And by the end of the movie, after so many struggles and big epic fight in the later part of the movie, like this another replicant character who's like sent after who's the protagonist to basically kill him and Harrison Ford's character, and or capture Harrison Ford's character. And she is like, her name is Love, by the way, and
Mm.
she is like I don't know what was hinted at by that name. Of course, we all know what the name Joy meant, because Joy is like an acronym for
Yeah.
kind of jerk off indicator.
Uh,
Like you're basically watching porn if you have her around. She's like totally holographic character. So her character is killed off by this Love character, and all of this happens, epic fight and all of that. But by the end of the movie, we come to find out that there's this girl who is making all the memories for the replicants, basically, right? So
yeah.
she is making memories, but how does she make those memories? By pulling from her own memory, like her own memories about her childhood and everything, and then implanting it into all of the replicants mind. And by doing that, the movie very certainly hints that there is a kind of messiah complex in all of the replicants. So at one point he's having a conversation with the main character what's his name, Joe's character. He's having a conversation with a lot of other rebellious replicants, and they want to rise up and defeat the humans in a kind of Marxist kind of fashion. So that's because they have this kind of messianic complex through all of that. And we come to find out later that it actually that girl who has kind of like a kind of a health issue that's not made clear, some kind of
Ah.
name that they gave. I don't know what's the name is, but it's basically like she can't go out of her confines
Mm.
to breathe normally or whatever. So she's confined. She's like inside this small pod, and she makes all these memories. And it's her who is the child who is born miraculously. So in this movie, it's like the patriarchal self-sacrifice is shown, of course, because the main character dies off at the end. And but the main messiah, the Christ like figure in this movie is that girl.
Yeah.
So that's a very subtle, feminist kind of.
Yes. The main focus is Rachel, which is a female. The child is a female. Even the leader who is in charge of the replica rebellion, she is a female with one eye. If you I think your audio has some issue. I'm not able to hear you.
Can you hear me? I just
Yeah.
muted. Yeah, because of the sound going on in the background. Sorry. Yeah,
Okay. Okay, it's fine. Like then I cannot hear
yeah,
anything.
keep going. Yeah, if you have
Yes.
anything.
What do you think about like a virtual partner? Like joy that has been depicted in the movie.
Well, of course, it's the same like the first movie, right? The first movie, Rachel is not a real human being,
Hmm.
but we are made to invest in her character because she's like a very vulnerable character, right? She's a
Yeah.
vulnerable character. She's totally dependent on the protagonist, and she's like kind of like a very human character. So this is like the switch that happens in this movie as well. So it's like this is of course the holographic. They've shown the lead female character here as a holographic character instead of an
Someone
android
like
kind of
yeah.
character, but it's very close to the agenda nowadays because the Great Reset does not involve, as far as my knowledge goes, it does not involve any robots who are lifelike. It instead involves virtual reality kind of AI. You're talking to Chat GPT and all of that thing. So this is more in line with what's going on today, where you are like speaking into the pixels and bits instead of material thing, right? So this is more realistic, of course, for obvious reasons. It's more closer to our timeline, and of course the replicants, the material replicants, they're like they're still there, but
Yeah.
they're kind of like just stand-ins for artificial intelligence basically. So this is like predictive programming in a lot of ways, like the first movie was, like the bug you all mentioned, the bugs thing. They weren't talking
Hmm.
about the bugs back when this movie came out, at least not in a mainstream way like they are talking about it now.
Yes.
So it's like conditioning our brains. I'm not saying that the director is totally a great reset guy,
Yeah.
but these people have visions, they have worldviews, and this is more like they're sharing the worldview of the global elites.
Yeah, I think that's how they operate. Like it starts with subtle things. Then, as time progresses, the agenda is more and more explicit. And then by the time it's like completely in your face, most of the people have no issue with that.
Right. Yeah. So
Um, yeah.
yeah, go
It's
ahead.
like, something like there was a time in which, even a little bit of intimacy in movies would be considered immoral. And now it's like everything goes. I think the only thing remaining is, at least in India, you can say is they just don't show the genitals. Other than that, like,
Yeah. Yeah, basically you can see everything but the nipples or whatever,
yeah, and I'm
and
wondering, even why you're leaving that now. It's okay, people are okay with it.
well, it's like, of course, we're not living in basically, we're not living in a world, we're living in a world that's basically in rebellion, right? So it's in rebellion to the old kind of morality.
Yeah.
And, that's whatever you want to call it. You want to call it Christian morality, or if we're living in India, then it's going to be against the predominant religious ethic
Hmm.
here as well, because at the end of the day, if you are having a Plato's republic kind of system, where you want to micromanage everything, you want to have a technocracy. You don't want people to be attached to something like that appears transcendent, right? Because that's going to supersede whatever the plan that's going to be put into place by the global elites. So you want to strip them of that characteristic as well. You want to strip people of culture, gender, even. You want to just make everyone kind of like an empty vessel, where you can put into whatever ideology that
Yeah,
you want
they
people to
want an
believe.
ultimate consumer. It's like,
Exactly, yes. So yeah, I think this again, coming back to this messianic theme that this movie kind of like highlights continuously with its antagonist or protagonist, or anything else. It's very significant in the sense that it kind of shows how the global elites, you know, socially engineer the mass psyche. So because this is this is like primarily a Western product, they're going to have that kind of undertone, Christian undertone to the plot or
Yeah.
motifs, because that's why because the reason why that's the case is because the Western culture is heavily saturated with the gospel,
Yeah.
right? So it's not saturated in the sense like in a very salvific manner, but it's saturated in cultural manner, because even if you go these days, like this is the current time that we are seeing, is it's perceived as like the decline of Western civilization. But even if we look at from the outside, there's still some things like the concept of innocence until proven guilty, like the rule
Yeah.
of the law and all of that, right? Even if it's not perfect, the sentiment is there.
Yeah.
So where does this all of this come from? It of course comes not from paganism or anything like that. They're least worried about whether you're innocent or not. They're worried about how to keep you in line. But the Christian story does that. Wherever, if you go to Russia or go to Europe or wherever, it implants that notion into the society that there's something like inherent individual value, and because you are a human being made in God's image, you are more valuable than anybody can say. So that kind of notion is injected into Western culture through gradual historical progress, and
Yes, and
even now, yeah.
yes, and if you see the worldview of the globalists, they are more influenced by paganism or pagan religions, right?
Right, right. But this still, the point I was trying to make is, why does this movie, which is like, and the previous movie as well, the both the Blade Runner movies, why are they, operating within this Christian motif, Christian symbolism kind of thing, with the messianic themes and whatnot? The reason is because, of course, they are coming from that culture. So, in order to socially engineer people, get them to change their mind, you have to still operate within the framework of Christianity somewhat. You get
Right.
what I'm saying? So you can't outright say, like, let's
Mm.
start human sacrifice, let's build a big pyramid. It's not even possible in India, by the way,
Yeah.
because of the Western influence here as well. So I think this is a very significant, more than people realize. And this just shows how much of a control the Christian aspect, the Christianity has on society. So it really makes you wonder, like, do the globalists have as much as control like they say they have, or if they are still operating within Christian frameworks, like if they still have to be desperate and reach towards Christian symbols in order to appeal to the common man. Who is the winner here? So that's like it's, that's what I wanted to make.
There, it's difficult to say. There are times in history where you think, the traditional values are returning back. There is a revival, and then there are stages like last 2 3 years, you can say, where things are not that good, and you think now it's yes, now it's over. Things have started to uh, go the wrong way, and the globalists are winning. So I think we'll not have like a single kind of trajectory in which it's either going the traditionalist way or the globalist way. There always
Well,
be
it's of
like
course this more depending on our choice, right? To add to what you are saying, it has more to do like what human beings decide. So we
yeah,
have the option to go down the full blown globalist path. Like last 2 3 years we had the option to go down, and majority of people were really like we mentioned in one of our videos, They were
yeah.
lining up to take the stabbies.
Yeah.
So it really boils down to the human
I think
choice.
India is never going to be a challenge for a globalist. And there definitely there be some pushback, but the scale won't be that large as what you would
Yeah, that's
compare to
I
West.
think again adding to, and I think you're absolutely correct. And it's unfortunate, but it seems to be the reality, of course, where neither of us are westerners, we're both Indians.
Yeah,
But seeing the cultural mindset, people are more inclined to follow authority, and not question it. And even if we look back at the pandemic and all of the things that has happened, majority of the dissident voices were coming from the West, not
yeah,
from America. So that's again, that's the ability to question authority. That's not a pagan concept at all. Like that's completely, I mean, uh, you are able to have movies like Blade Runner because of the Christian infection.
yeah,
That's basically my argument. So Blade Runner is of course flawed, and it has a very twisted worldview or whatever. It's it has a very Darwinian point of view. But on top of that, you still have to empathize with the character who's like shown as a marginalized character. He has to have nails going through his hands and all of that, for you to empathize with him. Or he has to be a miraculous born person. And she has to have a fragile health or whatever. So you don't have that kind of narratives in the pagan stories, right?
yeah.
So that this is these cultural the reason why he have so much dissident voices coming from the West. It's because of course because of that religious infection in that has happened in their culture. And India, as far as we are concerned, we don't have that kind of religious with that Christian exposure as much as the West had.
It's a
But we
popular
still
saying.
had it, but not to that extent. Yeah.
It's a what is a popular saying, right? Darwinism is Hinduism without gods. And if you see
Right.
the Indian society, I mean, it's shaped in that pyramid structure that the globalists like, right? So call it varna, call it caste, depending on which spectrum you are. So there is a ruling class which is at the top, and they have the access to the knowledge. They born out of the what is it, face or head of there's this protecting class, and this the where the majority of the population is, and that was what was depicted in Blade Runner. It was like the ideal Indian society at one point of time.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's this ruling class at the top of the pyramid. You go down the pyramid, it's just ghetto. Yeah, there you have some few Blade Runners in the between, like the warrior class. But then the rest of the society was just ghetto.
Yeah.
Uh,
It's like this but the argument that the people who want to control populations make, right? Like poverty is spreading, and people are dying. So it's better to just decrease the population. So Blade Runner kind of shows us. And even I mean, I don't know, I could be wrong, but a lot of my Indian friends, and I'm sure you have come across, is they tend to have like, oh yeah, population should go down. We have too much population, we have too much people. The people should not give birth to many babies. And it's not like they're direct followers of the Great Reset or World Economic Forum, but they have that kind of mentality inherently, somewhat.
yeah, because one thing is numbers are not on our side. Unfortunately, India is the highest populated country now.
Yeah, yeah. They had to get numbers down. Yeah.
And secondly, I think this is what I tried to hint in the first conversation that we had. Uh, The schooling part, that is. The schooling part is just like, yes, population is a problem, the environment is in danger, and then you go home and then you had Captain Planet and whatnot. And, you know, you feel that, yeah, maybe. And if you're someone who's staying in a metropolis, then you are like, oh, already there's a lot of people. Oh, population is a problem. So we like our education system, I think, is. Uh, I don't know whether I need to have a look at this about how the Indian education system that was programmed by the state was designed. Because one interesting thing that I found out was the Dr. Ambedkar about Dr. Ambedkar was when he was studying in Colombia, he was a very big fan of Dewey, who was instrumental in creating the American education system, the state American education system,
Wa-
and he
Was
was
she uh, was she related in some way to Rockefellers?
no. Dewey was a fellow. He was a dude, and
Oh,
he
sorry. Yeah,
yeah. So American like state education was designed by
I misgendered him.
and he had this I don't remember the exact title of the book, but he had writing on how like government education is necessary for democracy. And I remember writing in one of the writings of Ambedkar in which he was talking about Dewey, and he was like, that guy was so influential to him. He had written down his each and every lecture verbatim, word by word. So I need to check this out. This would be an interesting
Yeah,
thing.
certainly interesting questions, interesting things that we need to consider, because regardless of what we find out about that, we're definitely following the Prussian model, right?
Yep.
And the Prussian model is like, I don't know the exact code, but it's built because it's a system that creates bureaucrats or civil servants.
Hmm.
It's not exactly meant to create good thinking human beings, right?
Yep.
It's meant to create that kind of human being who will follow authority, who will blend in with the machine, the system.
It's like a military education, no, where you just expect to obey your senior or superior authority, right?
Yeah, and military education, of course, many of us have watched the drill sergeant, drill instructor scenes. We all know what military training is like, right? They
Yeah.
constantly barrage you with abuses and make basically desensitize you to all feelings, make you totally ruthless and whatnot. And I think the public education system is also, to a very lesser degree. It's not like your teacher is beating you all the time, but
It used
it's
to happen in our era. Now that doesn't happen.
yeah, nowadays corporal punishment is even not allowed. But
Yeah.
it's still, it's not necessary. That's not necessarily why, it's not like they're turned sincere all of a sudden. They're still like it more or less means that they've figured out a way how to do it more efficiently without the least possible violence or whatever,
Yeah, and there are
or
like there are some states which do not allow homeschooling for the same reason, right?
yeah, exactly. So if you don't, if that kind of education, and you as a parent, you would be more uh, aware to this.
Hmm.
Most parents, they don't even know that there's such a thing as homeschooling in India.
Ah,
In the
it happened
US,
with me.
yeah, I
uh,
mean, they
like
don't know at all that there's another alternative. Like, you don't have to spend so many lakh amount of rupees to get your children educated. You can do it
yeah,
yourself.
it's like when my elder kid was she completed 3 years of age. First thing, like my father started sending me all these messages about which schools are best in your locality, what schemes do you have for girl students and all that thing. I'm like, no, I'm going to homeschool her. And it was like as if, what was that? You're not sending your child to school. Uska future, what about a future? How will she socialize? This, that.
अरे हाँ, उसका
And,
दोस्त कैसा बनेगा, उसका
uh,
एजुकेशन कैसा कंप्लीट होएगा.
like, how? Why do you need to spend lakhs just to scribble ABCD at this point of life?
Yeah, and it's basically like you are not really learning in a public school
Yeah.
system. You are basically memorizing things, and you are just sitting down in the exam and you're just writing down whatever you have memorized. There's no, I haven't seen, maybe there is nowadays, but I haven't seen any space for critical question or what, a question answer session with the teacher. Why is this, why do we have to believe the Darwin's theory?
There's
Why? So yeah.
there's nothing related to any thought process about ethics or epistemology. Like this is just like, okay, this is the thing, and that's it. And just something regarding what we are speaking right now. So I had a friend who had two daughters, uh, and this was about 4 to 5 years ago, and he used to send them to both of his kids to school. And he did mention this once, is like, throughout the year they have something like, uh, क्या बोलते हो, so there is Independence Day, okay, now wear this and come. कभी होली है, or sometimes there is Janmashtami, you become Krishna, you dress as Radha and everything, which is fine, he said. But the kid didn't know how to write her own name, and we were spending like lakhs behind it, and we just went and asked the teacher like, the kids don't know how to read and write. Well, what are you teaching? And the teacher's reply was, okay, teaching is not just our responsibility, you should also teach them. And like, so
Okay.
even after spending like lakhs, the teachers are not even ready to take the responsibility of teaching.
Yeah, it's basically like they're glorified babysitters,
Yeah.
a lot of ways. I mean, to to speak from my own personal point of view, I really don't have, all of my friends, and I saw this in a lot more among my female friends more than my male friends. They tend to have, this like dedication, a blind respect towards teachers. And I found out, I always found that to be, it's not because I'm special kind of character or anything like that, but it's more or less, I've been exposed to other things as well aside from my public school teaching. And I could not for the life of me figure out why is there so many undue respect towards the education system. Why is there's like a blind following towards the education system? So it's like you mentioned, it's very, I think the issue is very deep seated,
Yes,
more than
it
we
has to
realize.
do with the Indian culture and from a historic perspective. Uh, at that, if you see the ancient times, the Indian society in the ancient times, a teacher would have a great amount of authority and respect.
Are you talking about the Gurukul kind of system? uh,
Yes. I think that's how it started and in recorded history. But teachers have always been revered and considered as a person of authority in
Well,
Indian
there's
culture.
one interesting thing I just thought about with respect to that. Was the Gurukul system like were there so many students in one Gurukul session or whatever, as there is nowadays? Because the mass education system, I mean, even if we look back at the ancient Gurukul system, I think it, in my perspective, it was miles better, a lot
Yeah,
better
definitely.
than the current thing that we have. Because I mean, of course, there's like this still this inclination to have like this reverence for authority, as you mentioned. but still, it was much less severe. And what in Indian culture, what we have today is, instead of that small scale education, we have made it
Yeah.
mass. But we still have reserved that reverence for authority perspective. The
Mm.
Western countries have not maintained the reverence the aspect, but we have, in our own weird
And there's one
sense.
more thing, like before this uh, practice of, you know, educational institutions like coaching classes and tuition started. There was earlier, if you see, you can see 2 or 3 decades ago, uh, the system wasn't there, more or less, and that was something only reserved for, like, dumb kids, like tuition jata hai to matlab buddhu hai. But at that, there was a point not so long ago that teachers in India, there was some kind of dedication to work, and the pay wasn't that good. But still, there were a good amount of population. Now, if you ask our parents or someone before that, they'll definitely give you at least 2 or 3 good examples of a good teacher that they had, and it wasn't a good paying job as it is today. Now the amount of money you can earn via, tuitions or private coaching or running a class, compared to that, it was nothing. But still, they, even teachers themselves had, some kind of uh, responsibility, and they felt accountable to teach children, even though the system may not be something desirable. But I think that was the case. But I think
Yeah.
definitely it will change, as time passes by.
Yeah, that's a very interesting way to now. We have of course talked more than the Blade Runner movies. We have also talked about the education system briefly, I may add. There's so much more that we can
But
talk about.
yeah, but Blade Runner eventually, or everything that's happened eventually, is tied up to your education system, right? That, because at least when it comes to India, that's your only source of information. I don't think there are people once they have completed school or college have, like, read, got into reading something. Even the people who usually read, usually into fiction, like Chetan Bhagat or something like that. Nobody is going to pick up Fourth Industrial Revolution.
Three Idiots is not going to change anything, guys. It's worthless pandering. We can do an analysis of Three Idiots if you want. You can leave a
It's a
comment.
fun movie. I mean,
Yeah,
it's an entertaining movie, but it can't change the world.
it's overhyped in that regards. So it's not really groundbreaking in that regards. But hey, if our listeners want us to do an analysis of Three Idiots by Chetan Bhagat, so be it. Leave a comments, leave some comment or whatever your questions in the comment section. Of course, we're going to wrap this up right now. Yeah, a final thought. I just thought about that comment you made, that change is unlikely in India. Is
Hmm.
it really though? Because I'm still like reconsidering it. If we as Indians are able to have this conversation right now, and of course there are a lot of Indians who are not as really active on social media, but they may be based or red pilled or whatever you might want to call it. Do you still think there's a glimmer of hope in the horizon?
Then it would be like, it has to be a miracle, because
Ah,
even
yeah.
if you can, yeah, you definitely find people online talking to this, but like have a look at the subscriber count, or even let's just consider our population and compare it to the percentage of population. I mean, how much percentage of population do we make? Now, there's definitely like someone like Awaken India movement who is against globalist, and you'll have few people who are follower of Rajiv Dixit, and they are there.
Yeah,
But
shout out to Johan Tengra. Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
very
so they're
very.
definitely
Mhm.
they're
Definitely.
definitely there. But I mean, what is it compared to T series? I mean, the majority of population is still.
But isn't that the case in all, in any society? So for example, you have T series over here, and in the US you have what's that called, Meet the Kardashians, or what's it called? It's
Yeah.
Kim Kardashian and her family's reality show. That's
Yes.
like
Yes, but then you have good amount of population which is pro Second Amendment. The U.S.
that's
population
true.
has more
Yeah,
guns than the military has. Okay, like if something bad happens, even though they are, this kind of people who are just swiping Instagram reels, they still have good amount of population will be on the street if something bad has to happen. Like how the best we had was, in recent history was the farmer protest that happened recently, but then it was something that was issue that was specific to farmers, and it wasn't, addressing globalism or whatnot.
right. It's still in the old framework of, the government should be good. But that's something that people have a very hard time trying to find here, is that the government will always be trying to manipulate you in one way or another. It can certainly lie and
There
mislead you.
is,
It does.
I mean,
Yeah.
this is a far cry, but there is a lot of similarity between a person who believes in democracy and a traditional Catholic. Now,
Right.
like the College of Cardinals is full with liberals, but still, a good pope will be elected miraculously. Similarly, for Democrats, both the NDA and UP are filled with globalists, but miraculously there'll be a government and the power of vote will change somehow miraculously.
Hey, I'm not going to comment on anything about the track cats. Okay, so oh boy, I have to have the proper authority, yeah, to comment on that. So, anyways, I think personally there's a glimmer of hope. Maybe it's very slim, but hey, if we're still talking, anything can happen.
I mean,
So, yeah.
I would be happy if, things improve, but, considering how we are as a society, I think it's highly improbable, definitely not impossible.
Right. Definitely. So that's a good place to end the show. So not impossible. Yeah. So wonderful conversation as always. And we went on a few rant here and there. Not a rant, I say tangents, a few tangents here and there, which was I think I personally found it fascinating. I enjoyed your insights about about the Blade Runner movies. Of course, we could have dived in more deeply in the Blade Runner story, but I think we talked about some things that are not even talked about in the other analysis. That's the most important thing. We touched on the spiritual side of what the Blade Runner movies tried to convey, and that was very fascinating. So yeah,
Yeah, but good conversation.
good conversation. Yeah. Okay. See you next time. Take care.
Sayonara.